The stars were endless and cold and silent, and the Zorath Dominion moved through them like shadows of fire. For 1,000 years, their ships had swept across worlds, leaving behind order and fear. They were an old race, and they believed the universe belonged to them. Every new system they found was taken without resistance because no one could fight them. They had weapons that could tear planets apart and armor that swallowed light. To the Zorath, this was not war anymore, it was routine. They spoke little when they conquered because there was no need for words. Their empire was so wide that no single being could see it all. The High Council on the home world ruled from towers that reached into the clouds of blue gas, and their voices were carried through the stars by machines older than any human dream. They believed nothing could change their destiny. In the records of their historians, every page told the same story of victory and obedience. The Zorath had once respected other species, but over time that faded. They came to see every new life form as another set of hands to build for them. They enslaved those who resisted and erased those who refused to kneel. The few who dared to fight vanished from memory. No one dared to say that the Dominion could be stopped because such words were forbidden. One day in a distant corner of the galaxy, a scout ship found something strange. It was a small blue world circling an average star. The planet was rich with water and green land, but the strange thing was the noise. The surface was covered with signals in every direction. The scout listened and heard music and speech in codes. The beings who lived there called themselves humans. They had machines that flew beyond their sky, and weapons that could destroy their own cities. The scout captain laughed because to him it looked like a primitive race playing with metal toys. He sent his report back to the High Council and waited for orders. The council gathered in silence and watched the recordings. They saw the humans fighting each other in their own history and building machines faster and faster. Some of the elders warned that a race so driven might one day become dangerous. Others dismissed it and said it was just another child race that would bow before the Dominion. In the end, they agreed to send one cruiser to claim the planet and demand surrender. The cruiser was enormous compared to the small world it approached. Its black hull shimmered against the light of the sun, and its engines left long trails of white flame. Inside the ship, the crew felt no excitement. Conquest had lost its meaning long ago. They expected another routine victory, another world to add to the list. The captain of the cruiser sent a message toward the planet in a dozen languages saying that the Zorath Dominion had arrived and that the people of Earth must submit or face destruction. Earth, the message caused confusion. The scientists first thought it was a joke or a mistake from a satellite. Governments argued about what to do. The message was clear but unbelievable. Yet when telescopes turned to the sky, they saw it the huge shape moving in orbit above the planet. Fear spread across the world. Some called for peace, others called for war. In the middle of this chaos, the United Earth Command ordered a single warship to respond. It was called the UNS Valiant. It was not the largest or newest ship, but it was ready. Its crew was trained to fight under impossible odds because that was the way humans had always fought. The Valiant rose from the Pacific Ocean and climbed through the thin air until it reached the stars. The crew looked at the alien ship ahead and no one spoke. The Zorath cruiser scanned the human vessel and laughed again. It was small, fragile, and made of simple metal. The captain of the cruiser decided to teach these creatures fear. He ordered a warning shot. A beam of pure energy sliced through the empty space and grazed the upper atmosphere. The blast created a storm of light visible from the ground. The humans saw the warning and knew what it meant. But instead of surrendering, the Valiant moved forward. Inside the human ship, the captain gave quiet orders. The crew locked targets and adjusted shields. They had studied every signal from the alien ship and guessed where its weak points might be. No one was sure it would work. They had never fought anything like this before. But they had one advantage the Zorath did not understand. They were human, and humans did not stop until the last option was gone. The Valiant fired. A burst of kinetic missiles shot across the void and struck the alien cruiser. The Zorath shields flared bright blue, then shattered like glass. The impact tore a hole in the cruiser's side and fire erupted in the vacuum. The alien crew screamed through their comms, not in pain but in disbelief. Nothing had ever pierced their shields. They tried to recover, but the human ship was already moving again, fast and unpredictable. The captain of the cruiser shouted orders to return fire, but the targeting systems could not lock on. The human vessel moved too strangely, twisting between bursts of plasma like a living thing. The Zorath computer calculated thousands of moves, but none matched what the humans did. The alien captain realized too late that he was fighting not a programmed machine, but minds that thrived on chaos. Within minutes, the Valiant had disabled the cruiser's engines. The great ship drifted powerless above Earth. The humans stopped firing. They did not destroy it. They waited. The alien crew sent messages of confusion. They asked why the humans did not finish them. The Valiant captain replied with a short transmission that said simply, "Leave our world." The message carried no threat, only resolve. The Zorath cruiser limped away into the dark. The captain recorded his report for the High Council. He could not explain what had happened. He wrote that the human weapons were primitive, but their tactics were beyond prediction. He said their will to fight was unlike anything the Dominion had ever seen. When the report reached the home world, the council was silent for a long time. Some said it was a lie, others said the scout had made a mistake. But deep inside, the old ones felt something they had not felt for centuries. They felt doubt. On Earth, the people celebrated quietly. The news spread across nations that the alien ship had retreated. The governments kept many details secret, but everyone knew humanity had survived the first test. The crew of the Valiant returned as heroes, but they did not see themselves that way. They had seen what was out there, and they knew it was only the beginning. In the deep reaches of space, the Zorath gathered again. They replayed the battle recordings over and over. They saw how fast the human ship moved and how their shields failed. Their scientists could not understand how such a small force had done so much damage. Pride turned into anger. The council declared that the humans had committed an act of defiance that could not be ignored. They ordered a new mission to study, and if necessary, destroy the species before it grew stronger. But among the younger Zorath, there were whispers. Some said the humans were different. Some believed they had seen something in their eyes during the brief transmissions. It was not fear or arrogance, but something deeper, something the Zorath had forgotten long ago. They called it spirit. The story of the small blue world spread through the Dominion faster than the council could stop it. Captains told each other that a tiny planet had fought back. Workers in the factories spoke in secret about the humans who had damaged a warship. The more the council tried to hide the truth, the more it spread. For the first time in ages, the Zorath began to imagine that maybe they were not eternal. On Earth, scientists studied the fragments of energy left by the alien weapons. They learned quickly. The nations that had once fought each other now shared data. Engineers worked day and night to understand what they had faced. The Valiant was repaired and upgraded, and its crew prepared for what they all knew would come next. They did not know when the aliens would return, but they were certain it would happen. As weeks passed, the skies above Earth were quiet again. Children looked up at the stars with both wonder and fear. The world governments built new defenses in orbit and sent messages of peace to the rest of space, though no one knew who might hear them. The people of Earth understood that the universe was not empty and not safe, but they also learned that they were not helpless. Away in the center of the Dominion, the Council prepared, a fleet 10 times larger than before. They called it a test, but everyone knew it was revenge. They planned to return to the blue planet and erase it from the map of the stars. Yet in their hearts, some of them remembered the report that said the humans fought like chaos given form, and for the first time the Zorath feared that maybe chaos could win. The stars waited in silence as both sides prepared for what was coming. The humans did not know the scale of the empire that watched them, and the Zorath did not understand the strength that comes from defending one's own home. And somewhere between them in the endless dark, the memory of the first battle lingered, a sign that the age of easy victories was over. The Zorath fleet moved through the black space like a storm made of metal and fire. They did not speak of defeat, but every soldier and every officer remembered the strange world where one small human ship had made them retreat. The High Council called it a temporary failure and ordered a new invasion to show that the Dominion was still unbreakable. 10 warships were sent to the edge of the human system, with orders to study the enemy and crush any resistance. The commanders believed the mission would be quick, because no race had ever stood against the Zorath twice. On Earth, people lived in fear, but also with new strength. The story of the Valiant had spread to every corner of the planet. Children drew pictures of the ship and workers volunteered to help build more. Scientists worked with old enemies because now the whole world was one family. The governments that once fought over land and money now shared everything. They all knew that if they did not stand together, they would be gone forever. The crew of the Valiant trained again and again. Their captain spent hours in silence looking at the stars because he knew they would return. He remembered the alien ship breaking apart and the voices of the dying crew echoing through space. He did not hate them, but he could not let them come back. He told his crew that if the aliens return, we do not fight for pride, we fight because this is our home. The new Zorath fleet arrived near Jupiter without warning. Their ships were huge and black, and their engines glowed red like blood. The humans saw them coming on their sensors, and alarms rang across the bases. The Valiant was sent first, followed by 3 new ships that had been finished only days before. The human fleet moved fast toward the outer planets where the aliens waited. The people of Earth watched from screens as dots of light moved closer together. When the two forces met, there was no talk this time. The Zorath opened fire with energy beams that burned through the void. The human ships broke formation and spread apart. They did not match the power of the alien fleet, but they had learned how to move. Their ships darted and rolled between the beams, leaving trails of decoys behind them. The aliens fired again and again, missing every time. The captain of the Valiant ordered his crew to use the new rail cannons they had built after studying the wreckage of the first battle. The weapons fired metal slugs at incredible speed. The first volley hit a Zorath destroyer and tore a hole through its side. The alien ship spun out of control and exploded in silence. The humans saw the flash and cheered, but they did not stop. They moved to the next target and fired again. The Zorath commanders were shocked. They had come expecting to test these creatures, but now they were losing ships. They tried to adapt, but their computers were slow against the random movement of the humans. The Dominion's strength had always been control and order, but against chaos they were blind. One commander shouted that the humans fight like wild stars and no one understood their patterns. The battle raged near the rings of Saturn. Ice and dust scattered through space as weapons cut through them. The humans used the rings as cover, hiding behind the floating rocks and striking when the aliens passed close. The Zorath ships fired blindly into the debris and destroyed their own formations. In the confusion, the Valiant slipped behind their line and attacked their command vessel. A burst of missiles struck the rear engines and the ship broke apart. When the human sensors showed the alien ships retreating again, the fleet did not chase them. They watched as the survivors vanished into the dark. The captain of the Valiant sent a single message that said, "This is our system, do not return." The message traveled across the stars and reached the Dominion a week later. The Council was furious. The loss of 2 fleets was unthinkable. Some demanded total destruction of the human race, while others began to fear that these humans were something the universe had made to test them. On Earth there was both joy and sorrow. The people cheered for the victory, but many had lost family members in the battle. The debris from destroyed ships drifted through the solar system as reminders of what had happened. The governments decided to form one united defense council called the Terran Alliance. It was made of representatives from every country and every colony. Their goal was not conquest but survival. The Valiant and her crew became symbols of hope. Songs were written about them and statues were built in their honor, but the captain refused to return to Earth. He stayed in orbit near Mars where new ships were being built. He said the war is not over, it is only sleeping. He was right, because far away the Dominion prepared something even greater. In the Zorath capital, the High Council met in secret. They had lost ships and pride, but they still had power beyond imagination. The oldest of them said that if they destroy this human race, the rest of the universe will remember their strength. They decided to send a grand fleet of 10,000 ships to erase the humans completely. The fleet would be led by their most powerful vessel called the Obsidian Crown, a ship so vast it could cast a shadow over a moon. While the Dominion prepared its armada, humanity continued to build and learn. They discovered how to adapt alien technology and used it to strengthen their shields and engines. Factories worked day and night building new weapons. The people of Earth, who once argued about everything, now spoke with one voice. They said, "We are one world now, and no one will take it from us." In the quiet hours before the next storm, the crew of the Valiant watched the stars and talked about home. Some missed the oceans, others missed the forests, but they all knew they might never see them again. The captain told them that even if they die, their names will live because they showed the universe what it means to be human. They sat in silence after that, listening to the soft hum of the ship and the endless whisper of space. The Zorath fleet left their home world with thunder that shook the void. Thousands of ships formed lines that stretched farther than sight. Their weapons glowed like small suns, and their leaders spoke of final victory. They believed that when this war ended, there would be no one left to oppose them for another 1,000 years. News of the incoming fleet reached the Terran Alliance, and there was no panic, only determination. Every ship that could fly was armed, and every soldier took position. Civilians were sent to hidden colonies deep underground and in far moons. The human engineers sent their final transmission to all ships saying, "Remember what we fight for." Across the dark sky, thousands of lights moved into formation around Earth. When the first sensors detected the approach of the alien armada, there was no sound, only the slow beating of hearts. The captain of the Valiant stood on the bridge and looked at the stars that now glowed red with the reflection of the enemy fleet. He whispered that it begins again and gave the order to ready all weapons. The humans knew they were outnumbered, but they had something that could not be counted. They had hope and they had anger, and they had the memory of what they had already done. The Zorath fleet came closer, and the space between the two sides began to fill with light from thousands of engines. The humans waited until the enemy was within range. Then, without a signal or a speech, the first human ship fired and the war began again. The stars around Earth burned brighter than ever before, and the story of the human race entered a new chapter written in courage and in fire. The Zorath armada spread across the dark like an endless sea of fire. The light from their engines covered the stars, and their shadows fell over the human worlds. Every ship was built for war, and every crew believed they were chosen to end this conflict forever. They moved together with the cold precision of a machine, and behind them followed their leader aboard the Obsidian Crown, the largest warship the galaxy had ever seen. It was so big that it carried within it smaller fleets ready to deploy at command. The Zorath commander stood on the bridge looking out at the human system and thought it would soon be silent. On Earth, the alarms sounded again. The Terran Alliance already knew they could not match the size of the enemy fleet, but they had learned to use the stars themselves as their allies. The human ships were smaller and faster, and their pilots had spent months practicing strange maneuvers that no computer could predict. The Valiant led the defense, and the captain ordered the fleet to spread thin across the outer system. He said, "We will not meet them head-on, we will make them chase us." The first contact happened near Neptune. A small group of human frigates appeared out of nowhere, fired their weapons, and vanished behind the planet's dark side. The Zorath ships followed, but when they arrived there was nothing left but fragments of ice. Then more attacks came from another direction. The humans moved like ghosts, appearing and disappearing between moons and asteroids. The Zorath commanders grew frustrated because every time they locked onto one group, another struck from behind. The battle stretched for days across the cold outer space. The humans used old satellites as traps, turning them into mines that exploded when the alien ships passed near. The Dominion lost dozens of vessels, but still they came forward. The Obsidian Crown watched from afar, its sensors tracking every movement. The commander aboard it began to understand that this was not a normal enemy. The humans were not fighting to win every fight, they were fighting to survive each moment. That made them dangerous because they could not be predicted by logic. In one of the battles near Saturn, the Valiant took heavy damage. A plasma strike hit the rear of the ship and half of its systems went dark. The crew worked without rest to keep it flying. The captain refused to retreat. He said, "If we fall here, they will follow to Earth, and that cannot happen." The engineers rerouted power through broken circuits, and the ship rose again, burning but still fighting. The crew was exhausted, and some had not slept in 2 days, yet no one left their post. They looked out at the black sky and saw the enemy's lights and felt no fear, only determination. The Zorath tried a new strategy. They split their fleet into several groups, hoping to corner the smaller human forces. But the humans had expected this. The Valiant and 3 other ships pretended to flee and drew one group toward Uranus, where they had planted hidden charges weeks earlier. When the alien ships entered the field, the humans detonated the charges and half of the enemy fleet vanished in a storm of light. The humans did not celebrate, they only moved to the next position. As the days turned into weeks, both sides grew tired. The Dominion had never fought such a long and costly war. Their soldiers began to question their leaders in whispers. Some asked why a race so small could resist them for so long. The High Council ordered silence and told them to remember their destiny, but even destiny could not erase the memory of defeat. The commander of the Obsidian Crown decided that enough time had been wasted. He would end it himself. The Obsidian Crown moved forward, leaving the rest of the fleet behind. It was a moving fortress the size of a continent. Its main cannon could tear apart moons, and its shields could withstand the fire of 1,000 ships. When the humans saw it approach, they knew what it meant. The captain of the Valiant called all remaining ships to rally. He said, "This is the heart of the enemy. If we destroy it, the rest will fall." No one argued. The humans gathered near Mars, where they had hidden their last defenses. They placed satellites filled with explosives around the orbit and prepared for the final battle. The Obsidian Crown entered the system slowly as if confident of victory. The humans opened fire with everything they had. Beams and missiles struck its shields, but nothing happened. The alien commander smiled for the first time since the war began. He ordered his ship to return fire. The blast from the Obsidian Crown's main cannon struck 3 human ships and turned them to dust. The shockwave rippled through space and the debris scattered across the battlefield. The Valiant was thrown off course but recovered. The captain's voice came through the comms, calm and clear. He said, "Hold the line." The humans regrouped and fired again. Every ship poured out its weapons even though they knew it could not be enough. The battle near Mars burned brighter than any sunrise. The Obsidian Crown continued forward, destroying everything in its path. The humans were losing ships faster than they could count. Then the Valiant did something no one expected. It charged straight toward the enemy flagship. The crew did not question the order. They knew what their captain intended. The human fleet saw the small ship moving through the chaos and they covered it with their own fire, giving it time to reach the target. As the Valiant closed in, the alien commander laughed. He said, "One small ship cannot harm us," but the humans were not trying to destroy it with weapons. They were aiming for its heart. The Valiant's crew hacked into the alien network using a code they had built from captured signals. It took only seconds before the Obsidian Crown systems began to flicker. The Zorath commander shouted for his engineers to block the intrusion, but it was too late. The human crew had found a way to overload the energy cores that powered the massive ship. The captain of the Valiant sent his last message to the fleet. He said, "Keep fighting, we will finish this." Then the ship pushed into the energy field around the Obsidian Crown and vanished in light. For a moment, everything was silent. Then the core exploded. The blast spread out like a new star being born. The shock destroyed hundreds of alien ships and scattered the rest. The humans watched from their remaining vessels, unable to speak. The largest ship in the galaxy had fallen. When the light faded, the battlefield was quiet. The Zorath ships drifted without command, and the survivors began to retreat. The human fleet was almost gone, only a few damaged ships remained. The captain of the second fleet sent a message to Earth saying the enemy is gone, but so is the Valiant. On the ground, people wept both for the victory and for the loss. The name of the ship became a legend that every child would learn. Far away in the Dominion, the news reached the High Council. The silence in their hall was heavier than any sound. For the first time in their long history, they had been stopped by another race. Some of the elders refused to believe it. Others called for peace, but no one knew what to do. The war that was supposed to prove their strength had shown their weakness. In the ruins of the battlefield, the wreckage of ships floated through the dark. Pieces of the Valiant drifted among them, glowing softly in the starlight. The humans recovered what they could and built a memorial near Mars. They said, "These people showed us what it means to fight for something greater than life." And though they were gone, their courage would guide us forever. As months passed, no new fleets came from the Dominion. The Zorath Empire had withdrawn into silence. The humans rebuilt their defenses, but they also began to dream of peace. They knew the war had changed them. They had faced an empire that ruled galaxies and survived. The stars that once seemed distant now felt close and alive. They were no longer just watchers of the universe, they were part of its story. In the cold space between the stars, the last echo of the explosion faded, and with it, the sound of war. The humans looked at the empty sky and whispered thanks to the crew of the Valiant. They had shown that even the smallest light could stand against endless darkness, and that sometimes one act of courage could change the fate of galaxies. The stars had grown quiet after the great explosion that ended the war. For many months, the sky above Earth was peaceful and people began to breathe again. The wrecks of old ships still floated around Mars like ghosts of the battle that had saved the world. Engineers worked day and night to collect what was left of them and learn from the pieces. The name of the Valiant was spoken with respect in every home. Children learned about its crew in school, and artists painted its final charge into the heart of the alien empire. Humanity was proud but also changed. They had seen how small they were and how much courage could mean when nothing else was left. In the halls of the Terran Alliance, leaders met every day. They talked about rebuilding the fleets and watching the stars for any sign of the enemy. No one knew if the Zorath would return, but everyone felt that the silence would not last. The captains who had survived the last battle were promoted, and new ships were built in their names. The engineers combined human designs with what they had learned from the alien wreckage, and made ships faster and stronger than before. Yet in every meeting the question remained, what if they come back? Far beyond the human worlds, the Zorath Dominion sat in shame. Their empire had stretched across galaxies, but now their fleets hid near their own worlds. The loss of the Obsidian Crown had broken their faith in their own perfection. The High Council was divided. Some said they should end the war and hide from these strange humans who fought like no other. Others shouted that the honor of the Dominion must be restored at any cost. The arguments went on for months while their people whispered that perhaps the age of the Zorath was ending. One night on the human homeworld, a small signal came through the outer stations. It was faint and almost lost in the background noise of space, but when decoded, it carried a pattern that was not natural. The scientists brought it to the Alliance leaders and played it again and again. It was not a threat. It was a request for contact. The words were in broken human language and said, "We do not understand how you fight, we want to know why." The leaders argued for days about what to do. Some feared it was a trap, others said it might be a chance to end the war forever. In the end, they agreed to send a small unarmed ship to meet the signal. The ship was called the Horizon, and its crew were scientists, not soldiers. They followed the signal to the edge of the system where they found a single small craft waiting. It was Zorath, but its weapons were off and its lights dim. The Horizon stopped a safe distance away and opened a channel. The alien voice that answered was calm and strange. It said, "You are humans, you have done what no race has done before. We wish to speak." The human commander replied that they would listen, but only if there was no threat. The alien promised peace. They talked for many hours about the war, and about the things the Zorath had believed. The alien said that for thousands of years they had thought strength was everything, but when they met humans they saw something they could not measure. He said, "You fight with something that has no form." The human scientist said, "It is hope." When the Horizon returned, the crew brought recordings of the meeting. The leaders listened and could not decide what to believe. Some said it was only one alien acting alone, but others said maybe it was a sign that the war had truly ended. Still, they kept their defenses ready. New bases were built on the Moon and Mars, and every ship was fitted with stronger shields. The people of Earth did not forget how close they had come to being destroyed. On the other side of the galaxy, the Zorath Council watched the same recordings sent by their envoy. Some were furious that one of their own had spoken to humans without permission. Others were silent because deep inside they knew he was right. The Dominion had lost not only ships but the meaning of what they were. For ages they had ruled through fear, but now they feared themselves. Some began to study the humans secretly through captured signals and broadcasts from Earth. They saw art and laughter and kindness mixed with the power of war. It was something they did not understand but could not stop watching. Years passed and both races rebuilt. The humans explored farther than ever before. They sent ships beyond their solar system and found ruins of older civilizations that the Dominion had destroyed long ago. They learned that the Zorath had not always been cruel. Once they had been explorers and builders like humans until pride had turned them into conquerors. The discovery made many on Earth feel pity rather than hatred. They realized that what happened to the Zorath could one day happen to them if they forgot who they were. One day, a human exploration ship found a damaged Zorath freighter drifting in deep space. Its crew was dying and sent a distress call. The human captain made a choice that shocked even his own people. He ordered his crew to rescue the aliens. They brought them aboard and treated their wounds. When the rescued commander awoke, he asked why they had saved him. The captain said because that is what humans do. The Zorath did not answer, but tears formed in his eyes, a thing his kind had not done in centuries. When news of this act reached the Dominion, it spread like fire. The story told of how humans had saved their enemies instead of destroying them. The High Council tried to block the news, but it was too late. The people had heard it, and it changed them more than any speech or order could. For the first time, many Zorath began to question what their empire truly meant. The Dominion sent another message to Earth, this time through official channels. It said that they wished to send observers to learn and to share knowledge. The Alliance debated again but finally agreed under strict watch. A group of Zorath scientists landed on Earth and saw the blue oceans and green lands that had once seemed so small to them. They walked among humans and were treated not as prisoners but as guests. One of them said this world is more powerful than any empire because it has heart. Slowly, the fear between the two races began to fade, though memories of war still lingered. The Zorath no longer sent fleets across galaxies. They turned their power inward to rebuild their own worlds and heal the damage of their past. The humans continued to explore, but they also helped the former enemies rebuild. Together they began to form a fragile peace that no one had expected. The captain of the Valiant was gone, but his name lived in every treaty and every new ship that left the docks. On the day the first joint human and Zorath ship launched into space, the entire planet watched. The engines lit up the sky and the ship rose slowly beyond the clouds. The people cheered, but it was not the sound of victory, it was the sound of hope. In the silence of space, the new ship drifted toward the stars, carrying both humans and Zorath on the same bridge. They looked at each other and then at the endless dark ahead. The human commander said maybe this is what the universe wanted all along, not war, but understanding. The Zorath scientist nodded and said perhaps this is how we begin again. The stars waited as they always had, watching another small step of two species that had once been enemies, now learning to share the same sky. In the distance, the wreckage of old battles still floated, but they no longer marked defeat, they marked the price of peace. The humans had shown that strength was not in domination but in compassion, and the Zorath had finally understood that to rule the stars meant nothing if you could not understand life itself. And so the silence that followed was not the silence of fear, but of peace, the kind that fills the universe after it has seen enough war. The story of the humans and the Zorath became a legend told on countless worlds, a story about how one small planet had stopped an empire not only with weapons but with heart. Years passed and the stars seemed calmer. But under that calm, something new was growing. The peace between humans and the Zorath had become stronger. Yet both sides still carried memories of what had happened. There were whispers in the human colonies about how long this peace would last, and if the Zorath could ever be trusted again. The leaders tried to keep people united, but they knew deep down that peace was like glass, strong when cared for but easy to break. On the other side, the Zorath were still learning what it meant to live without fear. Their old systems of command were gone, and many of them did not know what to do with their freedom. Some wished to rebuild their fleets, but others wanted to explore like their ancestors once had. One quiet morning, a research station near Saturn picked up strange energy readings from deep space. The scientists thought it might be a star collapse, but when they checked again, the signal was pulsing in a rhythm too perfect to be natural. They sent the data to the Alliance Center, and soon the message spread through every command post. The Zorath also received it through their shared communication network. For the first time since the war, both races gathered together to study something unknown to both of them. The readings grew stronger every day, and it seemed to be moving toward the edge of human space. A joint team was formed to investigate, made of human engineers and Zorath scientists. They called the mission Unity. The ship that carried them was built together using both technologies. It was faster than any ship before, and carried enough power to defend itself if needed. The crew was nervous but curious. They had all grown up hearing stories of the war, but now they were part of a mission that might prove that peace was not only possible but necessary. The ship left orbit with cheers from both worlds watching. As Unity entered deep space, the crew began to pick up strange distortions in time and light. It was as if the universe itself was bending. The Zorath sensors showed patterns that matched no known energy. The humans compared them to data from the old war and found nothing similar. The deeper they went, the more the light around them began to twist into colors no one had ever seen. Then without warning, the ship stopped moving, though all systems still worked. It was like they were caught in a web made of gravity and silence. The captain ordered the engines to maximum, but the ship would not move. Then a voice came through the comms, but it was not human or Zorath. It was slow and deep, like it had spoken for thousands of years. It said, "We watched your wars, we watched your peace, now you stand at the gate of something older than both of you." The crew froze. The captain asked who they were. The voice replied, "We are what remains of the first ones, the ones who made the stars you live under." The words filled the ship with fear and wonder. The captain asked what they wanted. The voice said, "We came to see if you have learned." Suddenly, a bright light surrounded the ship, and the crew saw images flashing before their eyes. They saw countless galaxies being born and dying. They saw the Zorath rising from the ashes of another fallen race, and humans climbing from their small world to reach the sky. The voice said, "You both are children who have touched fire. You used it to destroy, but now you try to heal. That is why we let you see." The crew could barely breathe. The Zorath scientist whispered, "This is beyond power, this is life itself." The light faded and the ship began to move again. When they returned to human space, the crew was silent. No one could describe what they had seen. The recordings were corrupted as if the universe had erased the proof. The leaders of both sides listened to the reports and did not know what to say. Some said it was a trick of light or a shared dream caused by stress. Others believed they had truly met something greater. Whatever it was, it changed everyone who had been there. The Zoreth stopped building weapons completely and began to study energy and life instead. Humans started sharing more with them than ever before, but not everyone was happy. In the darker corners of both societies, there were still those who hated the idea of peace. They believed their strength came from war and that without it, they would become weak. Secret groups began forming ships again, saying they were only for defense, but their words were sharp. The Alliance kept watch, but it was not easy to stop fear once it started spreading. On the Zorath side, a small group of old warlords gathered and said that the humans would one day betray them, as all others had. They began planning in secret. Meanwhile, the Unity crew met again months after their return. They talked about what they had seen and how it had changed them. The human captain said maybe that voice was right, maybe we were being tested. The Zorath scientist agreed and said perhaps peace is not something we are given. It is something we must choose every day. They decided to stay together and form a new exploration program, not for war, not for politics, but to find knowledge. Their new project was named Dawn because they believed it was the start of something new. Years went by and their work began to show results. They discovered ancient ruins floating between galaxies, ruins that matched the symbols the voice had shown them. These ruins contained strange crystals that stored light in ways science could not explain. The more they studied them, the more they realized that these crystals could power ships without fuel and heal damaged matter. But they also realized they were not just energy, they were memory. The crystals remembered everything that had happened around them. When touched, they showed visions of past battles and voices of long-lost races. The discovery spread fast, and people called it the light of the first ones. The Alliance and the Zoreth agreed to protect it together, but others wanted to use it for power. A shadow organization from the old days of war tried to steal it. They sent ships toward the research site, and for the first time since the Great War, human and Zorath soldiers stood side by side ready to defend it. When the attackers came, the defenders did not shoot first. They opened a channel and played the recording of the voice that had spoken to Unity. The attackers heard it, and for a moment even they hesitated. Then something happened that no one expected. The crystals began to glow and a wave of light spread through the ships. Their engines stopped, their weapons powered down, and all comms filled with a single message: you were given peace. Do not throw it away. When the light faded, the attackers were gone and their ships were found drifting powerless. The defenders stood silent. The scientists said the crystals had acted on their own, maybe guided by something still watching. The leaders took it as a warning that the universe had eyes on them now. From that day, both humans and Zorath signed a new law that no weapon would ever be made using that energy. They swore that the light of the first ones would be used only to build, not to destroy. As the years passed, the two races became more like partners than allies. Children grew up learning both languages and new colonies were built together. The memory of war slowly became a story from the past. Some old soldiers still looked at the stars and wondered if the first ones would ever return, but most believed they already had in the form of the light they had left behind. Humanity had gone from fear to friendship, from destruction to discovery, and now they finally understood that the greatest power was not in dominating galaxies, but in keeping them alive. And somewhere far away beyond what any ship could reach, something watched quietly, pleased that at last the fire it had once given to the stars had found hands worthy of holding it. The ship named Dawn had become a symbol of everything the new world stood for. It carried humans and Zorath together across the endless dark, searching for the remains of the first ones, and for knowledge that could help them grow. Every new discovery brought both hope and questions about what waited beyond the edge of known space. Many believed that the universe itself was watching to see what they would do with the peace they had earned. On Earth and on the Zorath homeworld, people began to dream of one shared future where stars were no longer boundaries but bridges. The crew of Dawn continued their mission far beyond where any signal had ever reached. They found strange worlds that glowed with blue light and clouds that sang like faint whispers. Sometimes they would stop and watch as entire systems moved in patterns that no math could explain. The Zorath scientist said softly, "Maybe the universe is alive and we are walking inside its thoughts." The human captain smiled and said, "Maybe it has been alive all along, and we are only now learning to listen." Their journey was long, but every moment felt like the beginning of something larger. Back home, the Alliance and the Dominion worked together to form a council that included voices from every world. It was not perfect, but it was a start. They named it the Stellar Union, and its goal was simple: to protect peace and share knowledge. For the first time in recorded history, humans and Zorath voted on laws together and stood as equals. The people celebrated across galaxies, lighting up skies with waves of color that shimmered like auroras in space. The veterans of the old war stood among the crowd, silent with tears, knowing that everything they had lost had finally found meaning. But peace does not mean stillness. Far away beyond the rim of explored space, Dawn detected another signal. It was unlike anything they had seen before, a pulse that seemed to echo through time itself. It carried no language, but each of them felt it like a voice inside their minds. The captain ordered the ship to follow it, though everyone on board felt uneasy. As they moved closer, the stars seemed to bend around them until a huge structure appeared out of the darkness. It looked like a planet, yet it was not alive nor dead, something in between. The Zorath sensors showed that it was older than any known galaxy. The captain whispered, "We are standing before the heart of creation." The ship moved closer, and lights flickered across the surface of the massive sphere. The patterns formed symbols that neither human nor Zorath could read, but they felt something familiar, like the presence that had once spoken to Unity years ago. The same deep voice filled the ship again, softer this time, like wind over water. It said, "You have come far and you have not forgotten." The crew stood silent as the voice continued, "Once the fire you carried was used to destroy, now it builds again. This is how life begins anew." The light around them grew brighter and the voice said, "Take what we leave behind, but remember, every gift has a weight." Then the light faded, and what remained before them was a small crystal floating in space. The crew brought it aboard carefully. When they scanned it, the readings were beyond measure. It seemed to pulse with every heartbeat in the ship, and each person who looked at it felt a sense of peace and memory. The captain placed it in a containment chamber and said, "This belongs to all of us, not just one world." The journey back took months, but no one complained. They all felt like they had touched something sacred. When they returned, the Stellar Union gathered in the Great Hall built in orbit above Earth. The captain presented the crystal before the council. It shimmered gently like a living star. He said, "This is a gift from those who came before us, a reminder that we must protect what we have built." The Zorath representative stepped forward and said, "Long ago we sought to control the universe, now we see that we are only part of it." Together they placed the crystal in a chamber where its light could be seen from every world connected to the Union. People called it the Heart of Unity. The years that followed were the most peaceful in recorded history. Disease was cured, hunger was ended, and even the smallest worlds had a voice in the council. The light from the heart guided them in ways no one could fully explain. Sometimes it would glow brighter when great decisions were made, as if it approved. Children grew up hearing stories about the ship Valiant that had saved the world, the ship Unity that had heard the voice, and the ship Dawn that had found the heart. To them, war was something distant, like an old story about a time when people had not yet learned who they were. Yet even in peace there was mystery. Some scientists believed the heart was growing slowly, as if feeding on the harmony between worlds. Others thought it was preparing for something larger. The Zorath believed it was the soul of the first ones living among them. The humans thought it was the echo of all who had ever fought and loved and hoped. No one knew for sure, but no one was afraid. For the first time in history, the unknown no longer felt like a threat but a promise. One quiet night, the captain of Dawn stood alone, watching the stars. The ship was old now, retired, and kept in orbit as a monument. He looked out through the glass, at the same sky that once held war and now held peace. A soft voice came from behind him. It was the Zorath scientist, now older but still calm. He said, "Do you ever think about how it began?" The captain nodded. "I think about it every day, but I do not think of battles or losses. I think of how we finally learned to listen." The scientist smiled. "Then perhaps that is what the first ones wanted us to do." In that moment, the heart of Unity far below in the council hall pulsed once brighter than ever before, sending a wave of light that reached every corner of known space. Every world, every ship, every being felt it like a breath. People stopped whatever they were doing and looked toward the stars. The light faded but left behind a strange feeling, Not fear, not sadness, but connection, as if for one small moment the entire galaxy had shared a single thought. The council called it the Great Pulse, and though no one could explain it, everyone agreed that it was the universe saying it remembered. Generations passed and the story became legend. The names of the ships and the people who once stood against impossible odds were written into songs and carved into monuments. The Zorath and humans merged their worlds, their children born under two suns, learning both histories as one. The galaxies that had once burned under war now thrived under shared peace. Travelers carried the story of the heart to other civilizations who listened and learned. The message was always the same, that even the smallest world could change the fate of the stars if it remembered what it meant to care. And somewhere beyond the edge of the galaxies, the first ones watched. They saw the worlds they had once feared would destroy themselves, now glowing with the light of unity. One of them spoke softly to the others. They have learned the song of life, let them sing. Then they faded back into the folds of the universe, leaving behind only the light that danced through every star. The heart of unity kept glowing through centuries, never fading, never dimming. Its light touched every world and every being who looked upon it. The humans who had once fought to survive and the Zorath who had once ruled through fear had become one people bound by hope and memory. They no longer spoke of who had won the war because they all knew the truth. The war had ended not when one side lost, but when both learned to understand. So the story of the warship that halted the conquerors became more than history. It became the reason why every child looked at the night sky and believed that even the smallest spark could outshine the darkness. And in that endless quiet beyond all known worlds, something smiled, knowing that at last the galaxies no longer needed to be ruled, because they had learned to live.